My brother-in-law called me his housemaid, so I played along until he snapped. Then my husband took his side and told me to get out. My husband Rob and I are both 30, and we've been married for 6 years now. We have two amazing kids, Paxton, who's 6, and our little girl Susie, who's 4. I stay home full-time to take care of them, and honestly, I really do enjoy watching them grow and being there for all their little milestones. Rob works full-time in a pretty demanding job, clocking in around 40 hours a week. When the weekend rolls around, he usually locks himself away in his gaming room. He likes to call it his man cave, or he heads out to catch up with his buddies. Taking care of 2 young kids is no joke, though. I'm the one handling everything: cooking, cleaning, doing the laundry, and running the kids to and from school. It's non-stop. So naturally, there are days when I feel completely burned out and I'll ask Rob to take over with the kids for just a few hours. But more often than not, he'll brush me off, saying he's had a rough week and just needs time to unwind. I've brought up the idea of hiring a babysitter so I could at least have a breather or maybe meet up with my sister for a girls' night out, but Rob always shoots it down. He says it's a waste of money for something that's just for fun. Now, just to give you some background, Rob and I dated for about 3 years before we got married, so I knew going in that he leaned toward wanting a more traditional kind of wife. That's why it didn't come as a shock when he asked me to quit my job after I got pregnant with Paxton. I was fine with that decision at the time, but I honestly thought he'd still pitch in around the house once in a while. That never really happened. Anyway, here's where things really start to go sideways. Rob has an older brother, Jack, who's 35. Jack was married to a woman named Sarah for 4 years, and they had 3 kids together. But then she caught him cheating with someone he worked with. He'd been sneaking around behind her back for a whole year. To get back at him, Sarah went straight to their boss and turned over a bunch of proof: text messages, emails, the whole 9 yards. Their company had a strict no-dating policy for co-workers, so they both got fired on the spot. That blew up fast. Sarah filed for divorce right after and told Jack she'd keep the kids from him if he didn't agree. So, he gave in. Once the divorce was finalized, Jack moved out of their house. But instead of staying with their parents, he turned to Rob and asked if he could crash with us for a while. And Rob said yes, without even mentioning it to me. When I found out, I was furious. But Rob told me it was just going to be temporary, so I bit my tongue for the sake of keeping the peace. That was 4 months ago. Jack is still here. Now, I wouldn't even mind him staying this long if he wasn't such a complete disaster to live with. I thought Rob was messy, but Jack takes it to another level entirely. Our home has turned into this never-ending mess, and he acts like cleaning just doesn't exist in his world. Dirty socks and underwear? All over the floor. Dishes? Left wherever he finishes eating. As for laundry, he doesn't even pretend to care. He won't clean his own clothes, let alone help with anything else. It's been a huge strain on me, trying to juggle my usual responsibilities while also dealing with the chaos Jack brings into the house. I've done my best to keep things together, but it's exhausting. And still, I've held back from making too much noise because, well, family is family. I've had several sit-down conversations with Rob about all of this. Every time, he tells me his brother is just going through a rough time, that he lost his home and job, and he's just trying to get back on his feet. I've tried to be patient, I really have. I wanted to be understanding. But this past weekend pushed me too far. Rob and Jack had their usual guys' night on Saturday. They tend to come back really late, so I got the kids to bed, cleaned up a bit, and went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up to the entire house reeking of weed. I walked out and saw beer bottles scattered everywhere. I rushed to clean it all up. No way was I letting our kids wake up to that mess. After a couple of hours of scrubbing and tidying, I went to check on Rob and Jack. And that's when I saw something I couldn't believe. Jack was passed out in bed with some woman. It hit me then that he must have brought her home from the bar. I was shocked. I mean, seriously? Bringing a complete stranger into the house where our 2 small kids were sleeping just a few feet away? I get that people hit rough patches, but this wasn't just irresponsible, it felt like a slap in the face. I was busting my back trying to hold the house together, and here Jack was turning it into some kind of frat house. I was done. That was my breaking point. I woke Rob up right then and there to talk about it, and you know what he did? He laughed. He brushed it off like it was nothing and said Jack just needed to blow off some steam after the divorce. I was beyond mad. I started yelling, telling him he needed to talk to his brother immediately, or I would. I told him flat out that Jack needed to leave. This was our family home, our kids needed structure and peace, not parties and strangers in the house at night. Rob seemed to take what I said seriously, so I figured he'd handle it. But 3 more days passed, and nothing changed. Jack was still treating our home like a party pad. That's when I realized I had to take control of the situation myself. I sent the kids over to my parents for the day so we could have a proper conversation without interruptions. I even went out of my way to make a big lunch to help set a calm tone for the discussion. Once we all sat down, me, Rob, and Jack, I finally laid it all out. I told Jack that it had been months since he moved in, and it was time for him to start looking for his own place. I tried to be calm and respectful, but I was honest too. I said I was exhausted from cleaning up after him and managing the entire house on my own. As I spoke, I could see Jack's expression shift. His face tensed up, and he clenched his fists. He was clearly angry. Then he let out this long, irritated sigh before he finally said something. "You can't just kick me out, I've got nowhere else to go." Jack barked, clearly irritated and defensive. His voice was tense, full of frustration. I took a breath, trying to stay composed, even though I felt like screaming. I told him I understood he was going through a tough patch, but the way things were going just wasn't working anymore. This wasn't sustainable. It was hard trying to explain all of that without losing my cool, especially with my husband sitting right there, saying absolutely nothing, offering no support at all. I reminded Jack that I was exhausted, completely worn thin, trying to take care of the kids, the house, and now, him too. For months, I'd been playing hostess and maid, and I told him straight up that it was time for him to move on and get back to his own life. I even said he'd always be welcome to come visit on weekends if he wanted to see the kids or hang out. But that clearly wasn't what Jack wanted to hear. His face turned beet red, and then he snapped. "You know what? You could at least try to act like a decent sister-in-law and help me out. If not, then just be my housemaid and I'll pay you for it." The moment those words came out of his mouth, I froze. My husband looked just as shocked as I felt. I turned to Jack, and even though I was fuming inside, a sly little idea popped into my head. So instead of yelling, I smiled sweetly and said, "You know what, Jack? Sure. If you're willing to pay, I'll be your housemaid." Rob started to interrupt, probably realizing what I was about to do, but I held up a hand to stop him. He didn't back me before, and I sure didn't need him now. Jack looked a little thrown off by how calmly I accepted the idea. His anger faltered into confusion. "I think it's a fantastic arrangement," I added with a grin. "I'll clean up after you, for a fair wage, of course, and as long as you stop throwing parties and stop bringing strangers into our house." Jack, clearly not thinking it through, agreed. Rob just sat there wide-eyed, probably trying to process the shift in power that had just taken place. Over the next few days, I played the role I agreed to, but with a twist. I did the housework, sure, but I wasn't exactly doing it perfectly. I had a little plan of my own and I was just waiting for it to unfold. It started with the laundry. I accidentally tossed a red sock into Jack's whites, and when he opened the dryer to find a drawer full of pink shirts and underwear, his scream of frustration made my whole day. From there, the little mishaps kept coming. I burnt dinner one night. Another time, I conveniently lost his gaming console for a few hours, sending him into a frantic search. Every tiny slip-up added fuel to his annoyance. I could see it wearing him down, piece by piece. But the final straw, the one that really sent Jack over the edge, involved his precious collection of vintage toy cars. That weekend, while Jack and Rob were out, I let the kids play in his room. They got a little too excited, and several of his rare toy cars ended up damaged, bent, or missing parts entirely. When Jack came home and saw the state of his prized collection, he exploded. He was livid, red-faced and shouting, demanding how I could let the kids near his sacred space. I didn't say much. Just a small, almost smug smile slipped out without me meaning to. That was the moment he realized it. The look on his face shifted from fury to realization. He figured out that none of this had been accidental. He knew I'd been setting him up, and that every mistake had been intentional. Rob's face changed too. He looked stunned, then angry, probably more because he hadn't seen it coming. Jack kept yelling, his voice growing hoarse while I stayed calm and quiet, watching him unravel. It didn't take long after that. Jack started throwing his stuff into bags, hurling insults at me the whole time. But he knew he couldn't stay. He knew that as long as he stayed, his life would keep getting more chaotic, one accident at a time. To my surprise, Rob was clearly angry with me too. Not grateful that his brother was finally leaving, but mad that I had taken matters into my own hands. The next day, Jack officially moved out and went to stay with their parents. I was pretty sure that was the last we'd be seeing of him for a while, and honestly, it was a huge relief. Finally, our home could go back to being just that, our home. But the peace didn't last long. Later that day, Rob sat me down and told me that he had spoken to Jack and apparently also to his parents. And they all agreed that what I had done was completely out of line. According to Rob, I had humiliated Jack during one of the hardest times of his life. Then he hit me with a shocking ultimatum: either I apologized to Jack for everything, or I could pack my bags and leave. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My husband was seriously asking me to leave our house because I had stood up for myself and tried to bring order back into our lives? All I had done was try to reclaim our home and protect our kids' environment. I looked him dead in the eye and said no. I wasn't going to apologize. Not to Jack. Not for anything. I told him flat out that I wasn't sorry because I didn't do anything wrong. Rob kept pushing, saying I needed to apologize because I had embarrassed his brother, that I'd crossed a line. The tension between us was thick, and it became painfully clear that we were stuck at a crossroads. And that's when it hit me: Rob didn't respect me. Not as his wife, not as a partner. He was more concerned about his brother's feelings than the chaos we'd been living in. There was no point arguing with someone who couldn't even acknowledge the damage Jack had done. So I packed up a few bags and left that evening. I took the kids and headed to my parents' place. When my mom opened the door and saw me, she immediately knew something was wrong. I didn't even make it past the hallway before the tears came. Everything I'd been holding inside for months came pouring out. I broke down and told her everything: how I tried so hard to keep our home together, to be a good wife, to stay patient. But in the end, Rob chose his brother over me just because I refused to keep cleaning up after a grown man. My mom was stunned, listening with wide eyes. But when I finished, she wrapped her arms around me and told me she was proud of me. That she supported my decision. And for the first time in a long time, I actually believed I had done the right thing. My mom hugged me tight that night, and through the tears, she said my dad felt the exact same way. No matter what choice I made, they were both behind me. That support was everything. It felt like, for the first time in forever, someone actually understood what I was going through, especially after being dismissed so easily by Rob and his family. Over the next few days, I soaked in the comfort of being back home. I spent time with my parents, played with my kids, and even reconnected with a few friends I hadn't seen in years. We made plans, caught up over coffee, and laughed more than I had in months. For once, I felt like myself again, like a real, breathing, living person and not just someone stuck in a routine. Meanwhile, Rob would occasionally call just to check in on the kids, but I kept the conversations short and impersonal. I needed space, time to clear my head and really think about what I wanted from life going forward. The quiet, the peace, it felt like air after holding my breath for too long. And something shifted. Even my kids picked up on it. They'd tell me I seemed happier lately, more relaxed. It was such an innocent observation, but it hit me hard. They were right. In just a short time away from Rob, I felt lighter than I had in years. That clarity gave me the strength to make a major decision: I was done with this marriage. For the sake of my own peace and my children's future, I had to walk away. I talked it through with my parents, then reached out to a divorce lawyer to get the process started. A few days later, I asked Rob to meet me for lunch. He agreed right away, probably assuming I was coming to apologize or offer a truce. I was nervous, sure, but I knew this conversation needed to happen. I was taking back control. When we sat down, he looked genuinely happy to see me. He joked about how messy the house had gotten without me, and how he missed having someone there to clean up after him. I just stared at him, stunned at how little he still understood. There was no remorse, no recognition of what he'd done. Without saying a word, I pulled the divorce papers out of my bag and slid them across the table. That was all I needed to say. Rob blinked at the papers in disbelief, opening his mouth to protest. But I stood up, heart pounding, and walked away. I was done letting him run my life. Done being the only one sacrificing. Done being unheard. Since then, my phone has been blowing up. Rob and his family are livid. They keep demanding I apologize to Jack, thinking that'll somehow undo everything. According to them, I broke the family apart over something petty. But I don't see it that way. I stood my ground. I protected my kids. I taught Jack a long overdue lesson. And I refused to back down when faced with an ultimatum that never should have been given. Update 1. Honestly, I didn't expect so many people to respond when I first shared my story. The support I've received has been overwhelming. Reading through your comments made me realize I made the right choice. Rob's still trying to get me to change my mind. Some days it's tearful apologies. Other days it's accusations, even threats. He said I was a bad wife. He even accused me of cheating. Yeah, the guy who couldn't lift a finger at home and let his brother walk all over me now thinks I was the problem. He's threatened to fight for full custody too, but I'm documenting everything. My lawyer's handling it. We both know he can't take care of those kids alone, not with Jack still hanging around. Jack even had the nerve to message me. He said I should apologize so he could help fix things with Rob. He seriously thinks I'm the one who needs to make amends. I reminded him, as bluntly as I could, that I don't apologize when I haven't done anything wrong. I told him I was glad he's broke and living with his parents in his 30s. Then I blocked him. I won't lie, I laughed imagining his face when he read that and couldn't reply. Right now, I'm focused on rebuilding. My kids are adjusting well. It's heartwarming watching my dad take them to the park after school, or seeing them all curl up with my mom on movie nights. They're happy. And seeing that, it gives me hope. Update 2 today, Rob showed up at my parents' house with his entire family in tow. It got ugly fast. My parents sat them down in the living room while we sent the kids upstairs. Rob's mom wasted no time, she launched straight into how I was ruining her son's life. Rob, of course, sat there in silence. She said he had provided for me and the kids, and that divorcing him was cruel. Then she actually said it wasn't a big deal that Jack called me a housemaid and that I should have just apologized and moved on. That's when my dad stepped in. Calmly but firmly, he asked what exactly I'd done wrong. He pointed out that it was their son who gave me an ultimatum. He asked why they expected me to take care of Jack when he wasn't my responsibility. He told them flat out if they'd actually raised Jack properly, maybe he wouldn't have ended up divorced and jobless, and living in someone else's home. That shut them up. My mom then asked them to leave, telling them clearly that they weren't welcome back unless they wanted us to involve the police. They stormed out, red-faced and furious, but I felt grateful. My parents had my back in every way. I called my lawyer right after and asked if we could fast-track the divorce. There was no more doubt in my mind. After all those years, the marriage wasn't worth saving. But I walked away knowing I had stayed true to myself, and that one day, my kids would understand why I made the choices I did. Update 3, it's been 6 months since all of that, and the court has officially granted the divorce. The lawyers are still ironing out custody, visitation, and dividing the assets, but the hard part is behind me. Some folks have said I should completely cut Rob off, and while I understand that view, I don't hate him. I really don't. I think he was raised by people who never taught him how to take responsibility, and he carried that into adulthood. That's not an excuse, it's just the truth. I don't hold anger toward him. For our kids' sake, I want to keep things civil. Surprisingly, Jack sent me a letter last month. A full-on handwritten apology. I guess he finally realized what a jerk he'd been. He admitted he expected me to clean up after him just like his mom and ex-wife had always done. He said he felt depressed and ashamed after losing everything. I could have ripped into him. I wanted to remind him that cheating on Sarah is what blew up his life, not me. But I didn't. He wasn't worth the energy. I tossed the letter aside and moved on. Rob told me later that he'd had a serious talk with Jack, that maybe the divorce woke him up a bit. I don't know. Maybe. But as for his parents? Still no apology. And that's fine. I don't need one. I'm just glad they're staying out of my life. These days, I'm working on my resume, trying to get back into the job market. It's been a while, so I know I'll probably have to start from the bottom, but that's okay. I'm ready to earn my own money again. My parents have been amazing, but I'm not planning to stay here forever. I want to build a stable, independent life for me and my kids. One where we don't have to rely on anyone else. One where respect, peace, and love aren't just things I give, but things I receive too.